So I'm Nick Laidlaw, and today we're going to be doing some fermented vegetables. Fermenting or pickling vegetables has been around in cultures for thousands of years. In Asia, they call it things like kimchi, and in countries like Germany, it's more of a sauerkraut-based thing. The benefits originally were for storage and for transportation. That's why they kind of fermented them over weeks at a time, even months sometimes. But more recently, in the last few decades, they've been realized the health benefits, especially towards the flora in your gut. By fermenting vegetables, it makes it easier for your body to break down the bacteria and digest what you're eating. It also has a bit of an antibiotic tendency as well, so it increases your immune system, as well as the good bacteria that's in the fermented vegetables. They can really help you kind of ward off any gut problems at all. So it's a really valuable tool to have in your diet. So today we're going to do just a really simple sauerkraut recipe. The ingredients include 1 head of cabbage, some turmeric, ginger, we've got some Celtic sea salt, we've got some thyme, and also some starter culture, which is dehydrated vegetables from the last one that we did. These are optional. If you don't have this starter culture, you can just use an extra teaspoon of Celtic sea salt. Just a note about the produce you use, it's really important to use organic produce because you don't want the residues of pesticides or anything like that going into the fermentation process. So always use organic produce. This is pretty cheap. The whole list of these ingredients costs no more than $10. So you should have no worries doing that. Okay, so firstly we're just going to chop all the vegetables. Just roughly cut them. Allow all the kind of water to be able to come out of the vegetables. Once we chop the vegetables, we then put them in the bowl, just all together. After that, we'll do the ginger. Make that a little bit finer, the ginger, because it's not very pleasant to have huge chunks of ginger in your mouthful. Pretty intense. So I kind of make these a little bit thinner, as well as the turmeric. Ginger and turmeric both have a really good quality of your own immune system. They're very immune boosting, and they also are very good for anti-inflammatory. So the fermentation process is very good for cooling down your digestive system. And then by adding the turmeric and the ginger, you're kind of doing that even more. So after that, chuck that in the bowl, along with the turmeric. Turmeric is even probably a stronger taste than the ginger, so you don't have to go mad with it. You don't have to use too much, but cut it fine when you do use it. And it also helps bring a nice cool color into it as well, so it looks good. I think with healthy cooking or preparing food, you want it to obviously have all the health benefits that it can, but it needs to taste good as well. So I always want to make sure I'm balancing the flavors and not just putting a heap of one food in there if it's going to taste bland just because it's good for me, or if it's going to be too dominant just because it's good for me, I won't be very likely to eat it. So it always needs to taste good. Cool. So I'll get the rest of the cabbage in there. Okay, so I'm just going to combine the rest of the cabbage into the bowl. Cabbage is a really good one to use to start the fermentation process because it has lots of small bacteria in it. So it's very easy to make a fermentation with. So once I've got all the vegetables in the bowl, I'm going to add a big pinch of salt, or even 3. I'm going to chuck the thyme in there, a little bit more sparing with that for now. And I'm also going to put the starter culture in there, and this is going to help speed the fermentation process up. All right, so what I'm going to do, with clean hands of course, is get right into the bowl, and I'm trying to squeeze all the juice out of the vegetables so that there's a high water content in the jar. It gets a little bit messy. You want to use as much force as you can because you really want these. You're kind of pre-digesting the vegetables so that your tummy doesn't have to work as hard. So you want to make them as soft as possible so that it's easy for your tummy to pass them through your body and also to grab the nutrients from all the good fruits and all the good veggies in here. So this often takes up to 10 minutes of just kind of massaging the vegetables. And after a couple of minutes of doing it really firmly, you can start to feel the water build up. And I add more salt because that, for the first few days of fermentation, before that lactic acid builds up in the vegetables, it's good to keep it from putrefying. So after you've drawn all the water and all the nutrients from the vegetables, we're then going to place it in a jar. So you want the jar to be airtight. You can use a big one, which is probably better, just depending on how much you have. Today we're just going to do a few little jars. And after a few inches, you want to actually beat it down. You can use like a mortar and pestle, or I'm using an ice cream scooper, but you want to actually make sure the vegetables are really, really compact. So shove them in as tightly as you can, and the lid needs to be airtight, like I think I've said already. Okay, so then once you've got the whole jar completely full with fermented vegetables, put a little pinch of salt on the top, seal the lid on, make sure it's airtight, and what you're going to do is you're going to put it in a dark, cool area for at least 3 weeks. It depends on the temperature. I did one just a few weeks ago and it's taken 3 weeks and it's fully ready to go. You will know after a couple of days, what you want to do after a few days or even a week is just give it a little crack open, and they call it burping, the fermentation. So you just let it breathe a little bit. It'll make a bit of a tss noise as if you're opening some soft drink. Just do that and then place it again. Seal it up, put it back in there. After usually 3 weeks in a mild temperature, around 20s, it'll be ready to go. And then you can just use it in all your meals, just like a little bit in your salads, on top of your salads. Almost use it like a condiment. You don't need to have heaps and heaps of it to have a really good effect on you. So here's a big batch that we did about 3 weeks ago. So I did a huge batch, so that means we're not going to need to do it for a little while. But it's similar ingredients. I think I added caraway seeds to this one. But yeah, it tastes really good. There's a definitive smell when you open the sauerkraut. And if it is off, if you've given it too much heat, you'll definitely know about it. So it's unquestionable if it's gone off, it'll be putrid. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. It's a really simple recipe. Again, bit of a disclaimer, it's not perfect the way that I do it, but it's an adaptation of a few different recipes that I've used, and it always tastes really good. And it's really simple and it's really good for your health. So enjoy.